Good evening, my fellow infected psychopaths. Today I'll be injecting you with the insanity that is my voice. Let's get started. Okay, class. Lego guns have been around for quite a while. In fact... Yes, nerd?
This is Spanish class, not history. Also, where's Mr. Kababwa at?
Numero uno, nerd. Shut the hell up. Also, Mrs. Kabapwa had other plans. So that means I'm today's substitute. And that also means I'm in charge of you guys. And that also means I teach what I want. So shut the hell up and listen to my lecture, got it? Okay, good. Glad we had understanding. Now let's get back to the subject matter now, shall we? So, as I was saying before I was rudely interrupted, Lego weapons have been around for a while now. Therefore, weapons went through many changes as time went on. Take for instance, my elite pistol. It's a semi-automatic gun that uses flywheel technology, but it didn't always used to be like this. This little thing was the standard for if you wanted a Lego semi-automatic brick shooter.
Question, was it a good weapon to use?
For once I'm happy to answer that question, nerd. The only answer to that question was a burning question, a single phrase if you will. Cue the montage! This, my fellow infected psychopaths, is a semi-automatic Lego handgun that I like to call KASPALL. Named after a famous Lego gunsmither from my childhood. You see, before we had YouTubers making big with YouTube shorts, we had the true OGs that were making the precursor to modern Lego guns, and one of the OGs was KASPALL. KASPALL was an old YouTuber that made a variety of Lego weapons that uses mechanisms that would rather be obsolete by today's standards. But despite the arcade shooter designs, his weapons, the OG himself, but always has a special place in my psychotic and childhood heart. So, since I enjoy KASPALL Arsenal, I thought to myself, what if I use my Lego gunsmithing skills to update one of his Lego gun mechanisms I used and was common at the time? So I did. The mechanisms I'm modifying is a semi-automatic rubber band brick shooter. Semi-automatic rubber band brick shooters were not only used in KASPALL videos, but were also used in many other Lego gunsmither videos at the time. How it works is similar to a rubber band gun. A rubber band gun has two parts, a F-shaped trigger and a gear that's attached to a ratchet. The gear and the ratchet is connected together due to an axle piece. Rubber bands is looped over the front of the gun and pulled back to get stuck on the gear. The rubber band will want to move the gear, releasing itself, but can't due to the ratchet being blocked by the F-shaped trigger. When the F-shaped trigger is pulled, the rubber band makes the ratchet move and hit the lower half of the F-shaped trigger. When the trigger is released, the gear along with the ratchet will release a singular rubber band, and allow the other rubber bands to move the gear and the ratchet into a position waiting to be fired again. This is what gives the gun its semi-automatic quality. Now, what people used to do back in the day was that they had a magazine that was externally or internally that would house projectiles. This magazine will feed the projectiles right between the rubber bands. That way when the rubber bands is released, it shoots a Lego brick projectile, and at the same time it will feed another one in between the rubber band. This was the first Lego brick shooter ever to be made at the time. The mechanism had its strengths, one of them being the mechanism was very simple to understand and replicate. Another great thing about this weapon is it uses very little Technic pieces, so it was very budget friendly at the time. Despite me giving the weapon its praise, the weapon however did have its flaws. Like a lot of semi-automatic rubber band guns, if you overload the weapon, which was typically more than 5 or 6 rubber bands, the weapon will fire all or half of the rubber bands at once. This would be inefficient for what I'm building, so I decided to reinvent the wheel as to per se. The gear is going to be a knob gear, and the ratchet is going to be made from some flat Technic half beams. Both are connected by a same axle. As for the F-shaped trigger, well, it's no longer an F-shaped trigger. I would say it's more like a capital G shape, maybe a question mark. But for the sake of video, I'll be calling it a G-shaped trigger. The G-shaped trigger is designed so that there's less space between the ratchet and the G-shaped trigger. This is a necessary design feature, so when I release the trigger, there's less time for the knob gear and the ratchet to fire most or half of the rubber bands at once. The G-shaped gear is connected to an axle, which is then connected to a lever. This same lever is connected to the actual trigger of the weapon. A spring is glued to the handle to the trigger of the gun. There are some features to help make the Lego gun more efficient when it comes to loading. The first one being a hinged door mechanism. The top of the gun can be disconnected and unhinged when you need to load rubber bands. Another feature I added was making a button-like mechanism. This mechanism is what allows you to load ammunition one at a time. There have been a lot of people that uses the external magazine types that will use the axle to hold the ammunition. And I could have done something similar, but I was feeling lazy. Plus, I was running out of time before I started filming. My version of this gun is good, but it's not the best. I will put it's more okay. There are just a few factors to consider. How good are the rubber bands? Are they too thick or too small? If the rubber bands are thick, they can sling the projectile further, but that means the knob can only hold 5 rubber bands. Not because they'll misfire, but it's more like the knob can only fit 5. If I add any more, the bands will slide right off. And if the bands are too thin, then they don't sling the projectile far. There are a few solutions to these issues I could do. Rather than use rubber bands, I could use an elastic string for a stronger sling, and maybe use a propeller 8 blade to 5 diameter instead of using the standard Lego Technic knob gear. If I do make any of these changes, it'll probably be uploaded as a short rather than a full video. Something to consider, I guess. But that's all the time we have today for this class of Arsenal. This video was quite the information dump, at least a lot more than my usual videos. But I'm glad you guys stuck around. Make sure to like and subscribe. Also hit or shoot the notification bell. Also be sure to check out my other videos as well. Until next time, see ya later, you psychopaths.